Hey everybody, Kyle Weisenberger here. Just want to do a quick Lake Martin recap, which was our third FLW Pro Circuit event for 2020, and kind of show you the fish catches, but I also want to show you a little bit of how I approached the lake, never being there. I think some of the things that I missed out on in certain areas of the lake I never covered, so I want to walk you through kind of my thought process in my 3 practice days. I'll show you kind of the area of the lake that I decided to fish, and then I'll kind of break down what I caught them on and things like that. But you know, it was a tough lake as far as quality for me. You could easily get 40 to 50 bites a day, but you could easily have had 50 bites and have like 6 pounds. So it was all about quality. So as you see where I show you in practice, I decided to go with what I know best, and that's probably largemouth. And I did catch a lot of largemouth, but I just never really got on some of the ones that I did find in practice. The water did drop throughout practice, and a lot of the fish I was catching was really shallow, and I think that changed where those fish positioned, and just never really came across any big bites, and I think that was the key. So thanks for watching, and we'll walk you through how I caught them.
Thank you, Lord. There he goes. go. That's a little better fish. Yes. Thank you, Lord. A little better one.
Okay, so I wanted to do a breakdown of Lake Martin. So if we look here on this the ranch unit, Lake Martin's a big lake. It doesn't look big on a map, but when you really zoom in and you look at all the different fingers and pockets, I mean, in islands, there's so much surface area to really cover. And just to break down kind of what I plan on doing, if you kind of look, we stayed at a house somewhere like in this creek arm, which is about the, you know, the mid lake, I would say. The dam is right here, and you know, we're like 5 to 6 miles up here. So the first day, I'd never been here, so I did a little studying, trying to Google Earth stuff and maps and old videos. And this lake, historically, spotted bass are the consistent fish. Largemouth are, you can, you know, kind of knock it out of the park one day but come back with a smaller bag the next day. I decided to kind of put in where we stayed here in this big arm. And the first day I kind of focused on these two big arms off to the right, the mid-lake two big arms. So I fished kind of like this C pattern right here. And I had a lot of bites. I maybe had 40 bites, but I didn't have much weight. I lost one nice largemouth, but without that I probably would have only had like 6 or 7 pounds, like lots of small fish. So I thought, well, most of those were spotted bass, and I caught a few largemouth. I thought, well, on day 2, let's focus on the upper third of the lake. So basically, kind of where I left off here, I drove up and I fished all this upper end here. And as you can see from the waypoints, I had a really good kind of practice on day 2. And in a lot of these pockets, I was catching spotted bass, largemouth, and all that. And launch was like right here's where launch was. So I was actually getting pretty close to launch, which saved me fishing time, but you know, more of a crowd probably around me. But day 2, I kind of figured out a little something on these back of these pockets. Like if you look here, I put a stop sign because I fished and fished and fished, didn't really catch anything. And I started throwing a square bow on the outside of all these docks, on these shallow docks, and actually caught like a 4-pounder. And like this waypoint, it was so shallow I could hardly even get the boat back any farther, but casted way back into the back of this dock in the shade. And I had a buzz bait on and I had a keeper on, and a good one came out, rolled on it. I had him for a second, but he didn't get hooked because of the keeper, and so I swam him off. So I thought, okay, that's a little pattern there. I got 2 good quality fish in this little arm. So I started thinking, okay, let's look at some of these other arms. So like I ran back into some of these other arms, like I came up in here, had some bites, and then I said, well, let's go up the river farther. So I found 2 more areas like it up here where I put stop signs right around this bridge up here, and there was a real big one that I actually caught in the very back of this pocket, underneath a debris mat that had kind of blown up in there. And So then I'm like, okay, I'm on to something. Start coming over here and start swimming fish off. I didn't hook them. So I had like a little good stretch of stuff here. I had some stuff up here. So that was day 2. So for day 3, I thought, well, what should I do? You know, what would you guys do? You found enough up here, which this is a giant section of the lake, but you've never covered this whole section of the lake, which historically is probably the best for the spotted bass, which I'm getting better at, you know, the offshore, the clear water type stuff, but largemouth is my game. So I decided, no, Kyle, stick with what you've got up here, try to break it down, see if you can refine it. So day 3, I actually had like another good day. You know, I had probably 30 or 40 bites, mostly targeting largemouth, and you know, decided just to focus my tournament up there. So then day 1 of the tournament, I run out of here and I run back to this area where I had the one I swam off, and I caught that big one off the dock. And I kind of started running a buzz bait down through here, and I picked a couple up, but there were no size to them. So I ran in there and I thought, well, let's run to some of these other areas that I had. So I came back in here in this pocket where I had, you know, some things in these pockets. Caught a couple other ones, and I thought, no, let's run back up the river to these 2 stop signs where I had this real big one right here. So I came in here, I caught a decent one, played around over here, and caught fish all day long, but only had 7 pounds, 12 ounces. So it kind of put me behind the 8 ball going into day 2, but I just decided, well, I've got to stay with largemouth and, you know, take a chance to catch bigger fish. So I tried some new areas on day 2, running some new water, kind of up in this arm of the lake, and the first 2 hours produced really nothing of any size. And then I figured something out. I started going in these deeper pockets. I had focused primarily all in shallow pockets. I go into these deep pockets right here that pretty much are just steep wall banks, and any piece of wood that I could find in the back of these pockets, I was catching solid largemouth, and getting close to about a 2-pound average on those largemouth. And you know, as you can see, this little arm right here, I went into all these, caught most of my weight just in kind of figuring this out. I ran down to another section of the lake right here where it kind of looks the same. As you see, these are all north-facing deep pockets. This set up kind of the same, and I ran down here, and I only went into 2 of them because it just didn't, the water wasn't as clean, it didn't set up the same. And I just, that little arm, I had something figured out. Okay, so I just want to do a quick rundown of kind of like how I caught them at Lake Martin last week. In practice, I really got dialed in, it felt like, for the largemouth. As the water was dropping, I think it pulled a lot of these fish out to the outside edge of a lot of these docks, and I was catching a lot of these fish on a Lucky Craft 1.5, kind of in a chartreuse black back, and I could basically throw it up underneath the docks, or I could throw it to the like the end and parallel the end of the dock. And that produced a couple of really nice fish in practice. It never really panned out in the tournament. I was kind of disappointed that didn't produce more than it did. But that was one bait that I caught him on. On day 2, as you saw in the video, I caught a lot of them on the pink wacky worm, which is just the it's just the Bass Pro Shop Sticko. And that's like a 5 3/8 inch. Just weightless, just anywhere I could throw it to any type of structure. Lay down a rock that stuck out. They were really hunkered down tight against that cover. Probably the third bait I caught most of my fish on was just a Zoom baby brush hog in green pumpkin green, and just Texas rigging that on like a 5/16 or a 1/4 ounce tungsten. One thing that I was catching a lot of the spotted bass on was I got a 7/16 homemade ball jig right here, ball head jig, kind of a green pumpkin, and I've got it trailered with a Zoom Super Chunk Junior, just in like a green pumpkin blue is the closest thing I could find to it. Just a little, just a little chunk. You put it on the back of that, make it look like a crawdad, but I could cast cast that out on some of these like little shoals or islands, little humps, and just drag that across there. And if there was one around, they were going to eat it. It seemed like every time you could get a bite off some of those spots, but there were just so many small ones. And then this produced quite a few bites in practice. It's just a 3/8 ounce white buzzbait. It produced some fish in the tournament, as you see that I weighed in, but never really got any real good ones. So I know in practice I swam a couple off that were pretty good fish. I think that they were in that 3 to 3.5 pound class range fish, which would have been gold, you know, at that tournament. But you know, you live and you learn. I mean, I caught a lot of fish. I didn't really lose any fish. I thought I made pretty good decisions on the water, but unfortunately, ended up 114th, which took me down, I think, from 41st to 78th in points. So not the tournament I was looking for. I kind of at least salvaged day 2. I was so far behind after day 1. I gained back like 25 or 30 points on day 2, you know, but didn't get a check and kind of just never really got it going this week. So appreciate you guys watching. If you have any questions, just, you know, shoot me a message, but appreciate you guys following along. Thanks a lot.